Imagine someone, a dreamy, enthusiastic boy, who is a precocious and eager reader, but when going up to Cambridge finds little stimulation in the intellectual life at the university, and begins to live a life of pleasure which includes women, drinking and gaming, until he falls into debt and runs away to London to enlist in a cavalry regiment. These are the last years of the 18th century, and so imagine that dreamy, enthusiastic boy becoming part of a group of young students and writers who are radical in religion and politics and admire the new French Republic after the Revolution. Together, they even plan to establish a democratic community in Pennsylvania, United States, and move to America to realize it. But the project fails. That young boy has a name, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He became a great poet, and that's why he holds an important place in your anthology. Strangely enough, though, he has been famous for what he wrote as well as for what he did not finish. That's because, both as a man and a poet, he was full of decisions and indecisions, alternating great enthusiasms with sudden depressions, all of which is reflected in his poetry. In 1795, Coleridge met another poet, William Wordsworth, who was, if not greater, certainly much more decided than him, and Coleridge fell into his orbit. When Wordsworth settled in Somerset, only 3 miles away from where Coleridge lived, there began a period of close collaboration between the two poets. They met every day to talk about poetry, philosophy, and politics, while they walked the countryside. In 1798, this poetic collaboration culminated in their joint publication of Lyrical Ballads, the manifesto of English Romanticism. This is well known. What is perhaps less well known is that of the 23 poems of the first edition of Lyrical Ballads, only 4 were by Coleridge. One of them, however, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, a long ballad, is the most famous poem of the whole collection. In fact, it is one of the best-known poems in the English language. It's the story of an ancient, that is old, mariner who kills an albatross, and for this he is tormented with the most frightening visions and is compelled to tell his nightmarish stories over and over. The story has become a world classic. Behind it, there are powerful myths and legends. The wandering Jew who was forced to walk restlessly until Judgment Day for a crime he had committed. The Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship which could never make port and was doomed to sail the seas forever. Also, the ship driven by mysterious forces and peopled by corpses, derived from 2 well-known medieval themes. The Ship of Fools, a spectre ship that carries men nowhere, and the Dance of Death, where men are taken away to their graves by skeletons. In the rhyme, death is a skeleton. There was Coleridge's main contribution not just to lyrical ballads, but to the Romantic movement, a stress on the magical and mysterious. On this, Coleridge and Wordsworth could never really see eye to eye. Wordsworth wanted poetry to stay on the ground and to elevate the commonplace. Coleridge wanted poetry to fly into a dream world of exotic or medieval charm. If you like poems in which the presence of the supernatural is felt, you will find no better stories than those of Kubla Khan and Christabel, Coleridge's other great visionary poems. Behind their exotic richness or ballad-like simplicity, we sense that mysterious forces are at play. Kubla Khan plunges us into an exotic world by evoking, very likely under the influence of opium on Coleridge's part, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice, sinister images of a woman wailing for a demon lover, and ancestral voices prophesying war. The escape into a dream world, however, was only on paper for Coleridge. In real life, he suffered many drawbacks and delusions. His marriage collapsed while he fell hopelessly in love with Sarah Hutchinson, sister to Wordsworth's wife. In 1810, he bitterly quarreled with his best friend Wordsworth, and that, together with his inability to write great poetry any longer, marked the lowest point of his life. In addition to that, Coleridge was taking increasing quantities of laudanum, opium mixed with alcohol. He was prescribed medical treatment for the illnesses he had been suffering since his early years, but it then grew into sort of addiction, as he himself recognized, without ridding him of his physical pain. But I would like to leave you with another image of Coleridge, closer to that of the young idealist we started from. Coleridge was also a keen social thinker who addressed most of the contemporary social issues, from slavery to the exploitation of men and women in a market-oriented society. He strongly denounced, for instance, that luxury goods coming from the West Indies, such as rum and cocoa, were the product of the slave trade. In other words, he was denouncing the fact that the commodities and luxuries enjoyed by many in wealthy societies are due to the exploitation of people who live in distant parts of the world, an issue highly relevant for us today. There is more to Coleridge than is usually thought.